So if I were to tell you those three things, you would go, well, I'm sure then Biden's doing better than he was in November because of those three things. But for your average American, nothing changes. The results of the polling were similar in a hypothetical matchup that included, you may think there's a difference between these two lunatics, Trump and Biden, these two decrepit elder care facility on a bad day lunatics, but they're not. They're not different like some people think they are. Okay, this is from New York Times. Trump leads in 5 key battleground states. It's the amount he leads by that is really telling. So in Wisconsin, they're almost tied. Biden's up by 2 percentage points. Wisconsin's a swing state. Pennsylvania, Trump is up by 3 percentage points, which is one of the most important swing states, has some of the most electoral votes. Of course, electoral system is a ridiculous system that was put in place so the ruling elite could have a little more power. But, let's ignore that. Arizona, Trump is up by 7 percentage points, way out the margin of error. Michigan, up by 7, way out of the margin of error. Georgia, up by 10, way outside the margin of error. And Nevada, up by 22. Oh, wait, no, 12. Still, Nevada up by 12. I'm good at the maths. So Trump, despite all of the endless coverage of his criminal trials, which, by the way, if you're one of those people who thinks Trump is innocent because you think Biden's a lunatic and a genocidal madman, then you are also out of your mind. Trump, of course, Trump did all these things. Trump is a con man. Trump is a criminal. So is Biden. And if the U.S. ruling elite decided to prosecute Biden for some of the shit he's done, he could also go to jail. So it's just a matter of where the U.S. ruling elite decide to put their efforts. They could, if Biden weren't president right now, they could arrest him for a variety of things. You remember the report that came out that Biden did have classified documents in his house, in his personal residence, but they decided that they should not prosecute him for that because he's not mentally well enough to know he had classified documents, which is not something as president you really want coming out. So basically they're saying Trump is apparently more with it than Biden because Trump knew he had classified documents, whereas Biden didn't. But I just love that, Biden's trying to not be prosecuted for having classified documents at his residence. And so he really wants them to say, we're not going to prosecute, the Justice Department say, we're not going to prosecute you. And then they do, but they say, basically, because you're not really with it, you're in your own little decrepit mind there. You don't know what's going on. Donald Trump leads President Biden in 5 crucial battleground states. And also, I'm going to give you a note about this polling, but a new set of polls shows as yearning for change and discontent over the economy and the war in Gaza among young, Black, and Hispanic voters threaten to unravel the president's Democratic coalition. People are yearning for change. So this is the kind of goldfish memory of the American populace. Americans always want the other thing if they want change. So if people aren't doing well, which I just brought you stats as to how they're not doing well, if people aren't doing well, they want change. Even if that change is going back to the lunatic, manipulative con man president who did nothing for them for 4 years. I mean, what did Trump do for average people for 4 years? Zero. The best thing Trump did that got done, the most significant, certainly not the best, was giant corporate tax breaks for the rich. And he did that with the help of a lot of Democrats. That was one of the biggest things he did. People weren't thriving under Trump. But the American populace, the goldfish memory, which our media encourages, has made it so that people think Trump is changed now because he hasn't been in office and he would be the new guy if he were to get elected. On top of that, people are furious about this genocide that Biden is facilitating. Now, apparently, a lot of these voters don't know or don't care that Trump would do exactly the same thing. At no point has Trump said Israel's committing genocide. In fact, Trump is more of a Zionist than just about anybody I've ever heard, other than RFK Jr. Trump is huge, massive Zionist, okay? He's the one who moved the embassy to Jerusalem, which was an insane move that just infuriated the Arab world. He has never said anything positive about Palestinians. The only thing he's said about Gaza so far that I've seen is he said it's not great PR for Israel. This is a thing right-wingers say when they don't care at all that children are being obliterated, that 35,000 fucking people have been murdered. When they don't care at all, they say it's not good PR. because they don't care. They don't care about the 70% children, about it's 35,000 people, not including the people under rubble. Ralph Nader says the number is closer to 200,000 people murdered if you count the famine and disease, etc. They don't care about them, but they say it's not great PR. This is saying it's Black and Hispanic voters who are most upset about genocide, and Arab voters as well, Muslim voters. Biden's losing all of them because he's facilitating this genocide, even though Trump would do the same, but Trump's not in office right now. The results of the polling were similar in a hypothetical matchup that included minor party candidates, and the independent candidate, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who won on average 10% of the vote across the 6 states, the 6 battleground states, and drew roughly equally from the 2 major party candidates. So that's a key point, that RFK Jr. is drawing essentially equally from Trump and Biden. For those of you who say, RFK, who I don't support because he may be good on some things, but he loves this genocide that's going on right now. And he also is a serious capitalist. And he thinks that more capitalism is going to solve climate crisis or something. It's just stupid. Just stupid stuff. For those of you saying he needs to drop out because he's going to draw votes away from Biden or something, which is not most of you watching, but apparently not. Drawing equally from both sides, okay? As was when Jill Stein, people say, Hillary would have won Florida. She would have won the presidency if Jill Stein hadn't been in the race. All the studies or the polling showed that Jill Stein took 1/3 from Hillary, 1/3 from Trump, and 1/3 of Jill Stein voters wouldn't have voted for anybody. So she didn't actually influence the results. Not to mention Hillary would have been an equal catastrophe. Continue New York Times. The findings are mostly unchanged since the last series of Times Siena polls in battleground states in November. Since then, the stock market has gained 25%. They're about to say all the reasons Biden should be doing much better than he was in November, polling-wise, in these battleground states. The stock market has shot up by 25%, which a lot of people look to that to say, the economy's doing well. Trump's got his criminal trial going endlessly, where people get to hear endlessly about him committing fraud and paying hush money and all that shit. And the Biden campaign has unleashed tens of millions of dollars in advertising across the battleground states. So if I were to tell you those 3 things, you would go, well, I'm sure then Biden's doing better than he was in November because of those 3 things. Hasn't changed at all. Hasn't changed at all because Biden's a catastrophe. He hasn't done anything for anybody. He's just done what the imperial rulers want him to do, which is continue to extract everything out of average citizens, our money, our life force, everything. The extraction continues. And he does these little Band-Aid things to say, but wait, I'm a Democrat. He does these little, I'm going to put thousands of electric car chargers, and that's going to suddenly fix climate change. I'm going to, and he hadn't even really done it. I'm going to Band-Aid on student loan debt. I'm going to erase a few thousand students' debt. Well, that's nice for them. I support that, but that's a tiny percentage of the student loan debt that is crushing people across this country, millions around this country. I'm going to put a tiny little Band-Aid here, tiny little Band-Aid there. I'm going to chastise the Supreme Court for Roe v. Wade, even though I was in the Senate for dozens of years and never tried to codify Roe v. Wade. And even after the Supreme Court decision, could have worked to codify it in the Congress, put something in the Constitution, enshrining the right of women over their own bodies. Never did any of that. And so he does these little Band-Aid things, but for your average American, nothing changes. And of course, this genocide is under him. So the polls offer little indication that any of these developments have helped Mr. Biden, hurt Mr. Trump, or quelled the electorate's discontent. Instead, the surveys show that the cost of living, immigration, Israel's war in Gaza, and a desire for change continue to be a drag on the president's standing. How about the fact that he can't stand up on his own? Does that matter? How about the fact that he poops himself every time he gives a press conference? Is that on the list of concerns? No? Oh, Michigan. So it's a big difference in Michigan because they have such a big Arab population that there are many registered Democrat Muslims in Michigan who are saying they're not going to vote for understandable reasons. I mean, they're watching Muslims being genocided. Like, that's slightly upsetting. Nearly 70% of voters say that the country's political and economic systems need major changes or even to be torn down entirely. Oh, you think? Oh, capitalism's the problem? What? No, can't be. Only a sliver of Biden supporters, 13%, believe that the president would bring major changes in his second term, while even many of those who dislike Trump grudgingly acknowledge that he would shake up an unsatisfying status quo. So, what we have here is that capitalism is a catastrophe, imperial genocide is a catastrophe, hegemony for a sociopathic U.S. empire is a catastrophe. And people are realizing that, and either of these two slime balls are not going to make a difference. Not going to make a difference at all. Zoom comedy event. Eleanor Goldfield will be the musical opener of the event. If you haven't heard her sing, it's going to blow you away. She's amazing. You can look up her on Spotify too, though. Laughing all the way to the shitstorm. You can get your tickets at leecamp.simpletix.com. Leecamp.simpletix.com. There's a limited number of tickets. Yeah, I hope to see you there. It will be a lot of fun.